All right, hello everyone. This is Professor Robert Solis, and let me switch back over here to our first Visual Basic Lab. This is going to be completed in Visual Studio 2015. In general, what we're going to do is we're going to have the user enter their first and last name. We're going to click the Submit button to basically say, hello, Robert Solis. If I typed in Robert over here, if I typed in Solis over here. If the user clicks the Quit button, then we just simply quit the program. You can see that we have some requirements over here. In this PDF document, it looks like we have some names that we have to give to the various labels and text boxes. And I think the only change I'm going to make is instead of making this a text box, I'm going to make this a label. So this will say LBL result, and we won't give a name to this guy, but I'll talk about that in a moment. It looks like we have some additional software requirements, namely that we have to have the escape button and the enter button enter into the programmability of this software that we're developing. So let's get started. Let me go ahead and switch back to Visual Studio 2015. So I'm going to have you click New Project, and then after a couple seconds we'll see that we have the various templates. Now I have C++ as my primary language, so you may have to go to other languages to select Visual Basic. It may be that Visual Basic is listed up here, so if you don't see it up here, then it's probably going to be under other languages. You see Visual Basic listed here. Windows Forms application is what we want. Over here I'm going to give this thing a name, so I'll just say CS111 Lab 1 project. You can name it whatever you want. In this case I'm just going to call it the Lab 1 project. And then I'll click OK. Again, give it a couple of seconds as it sets up the lab. And then what I want to do is to open up the Properties panel and also the toolbox. Now over here I have the toolbox, so if I click on this you'll see the toolbox over here, and I want to select Common Controls, and here are all of the controls that we're going to be using on our program. Not all of them actually, some of them we're going to be using. If I click on this push pin, you'll notice what happens is it locks this toolbox on the left hand side of our screen, and then the design portion of our form is moved over. If I click on this X, which I don't want you to do, but if I do click on this X, you'll see that the toolbox is no longer listed here on the side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on View and then Toolbox, and then you'll notice again the toolbox appears. From now on, just click on this Auto Hide Push Pin. The Auto Hide Push Pin, as you see, will hide the toolbox tab on the side, and if I just click it, then it comes back to life. And so I want to keep it in place, so I'm going to click on this guy over here. If by any chance someone has accidentally moved the toolbox like this so that it's floating, you can just simply take this guy and then move it on top of this semi-transparent button, and it moves it back into its docked location. Once again, if I click the Auto Hide Push Pin, it hides it. I'm going to touch the Auto Hide Push Pin so it locks it into position. Let me open up this form. Now you're looking at my high resolution MacBook Pro, so on your screen it may not have a form that's so small. My screen it's got a pretty big resolution, so that's why my form was a little bit smaller. Now I'm just simply going to go over here and drag and drop a button and a label and also a text box. As you can see, it's very easy to drag and drop components to the form, and you only drag and drop the ones that you're going to use. I don't need the toolbox anymore, so I'm going to click the Auto Hide Push Pin, get rid of that. What I do need in the future here is the Properties panel, so I'm going to click on that and then click on the Auto Hide Push Pin. Once again, let's say that you accidentally click the X to close the Properties panel. Now you don't see it over here. You can bring that back to life by clicking View. You have to go to Other Windows, and then you'll see the Properties window. So I select this, and then now the Properties panel is back up. And then another thing I'm going to do is to make sure that that Auto Hide Push Pin is touched so it keeps it in place. Alright, well, the first thing that I'm going to do is to take this label and move it to the upper left hand corner of the form. And you can see that there are guidelines that appear that this thing kind of just snaps into place like this. Let me switch over here. It looks like that's supposed to say first name. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and switch back over here and change this text property to first name. So double click over here, type in first name, colon, and as soon as I press enter over here on the first name property, you see that it changes it over here to first name. By the way, in this Properties panel, make sure that you click this guy over here. You can have data displayed in two different ways. One way is to display it categorized, and the other way is to display it alphabetical. One is not better than the other. I'm just used to displaying the data alphabetically, and so if you want your screen to look like mine, you'll click over here where it says alphabetical. All right, next, after first name, I'm going to take this text box and we're going to move that into position. And notice what I'm doing. I'm selecting that magenta underline, so that's too low, that's too high. Let me move it so it's just like this, where that magenta underline is visible. Then I'll move this into position like this, move a little bit to the left. You see that little tiny guideline up here. And then I'll make it a little bit longer, something like this, say for example. And that's going to be for the person to enter their first name. Now I'm going to place my mouse pointer right here. I'm going to click and hold, and you see this rubber band box effect. If I touch this and this, Control let go, you see that both of these are selected. Control C on your keyboard, and then Control V on your keyboard. Control V is in Victor. The Control C is copy. Let me do that now. The Control V is paste. And so there we go. Made a copy and a paste. I'm going to move this guy into position, something like that. Let's see, it snaps into place. Beautiful. I'm going to unselect by clicking over here, and then I'll reselect that guy because that word first has to change to last. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the text property, and I'll click over here, and let me get rid of that word first and change that to last, and then press enter. And as you can see, that now says last name. Okay, looks like I need two buttons. So let me take this one button, and first let me go back over here to my Visual Studio program. I'll take this button over here, and that needs to be a little bit bigger. Now that's the entire width of the form, and I don't want that. So I'm going to take this and eyeball it to just less than half, something like that. Doesn't have to be so tall. And that button has to say submit. Okay. Once again, I go to the text property. I type in submit, press enter. I'm going to take this button, copy and paste it, which is Control C, Control V as in Victor. I'll move it over here, and you see the guidelines help me to make sure that it's aligned horizontally. And I'll just take that and change that to the word quit. All right, so over here, type in the word quit. There we go. Now, could I have gone to the toolbox and dragged and dropped another button over here? Yeah, I could have done that. But I just chose to copy and paste. In fact, that's what I typically do. I do a lot of copying and pasting of tools that are already existing on my form. And so either way that you choose is fine. Okay, the next thing we need to do is we need to place a label down here that says result. So I'll take this guy over here, copy and paste. I'll move this over here to something like that. And that's supposed to say result. Okay, so that means I go over here to the text property, double click this where it says text, or I could just simply click over here and hit backspace to get rid of that, type in result, enter. And now I need to place a label over here. Okay, let me just take this label over here and copy and paste it. Now this label can move, but it's not resizable. To make it resizable, what I'm going to do is to go to the auto size property, which is currently true. It is automatically going to size this label. So I will double click it and it changes to false. Now you can see that I can manually change the size of this thing. I can also click on this drop down and select true or false, right? So I'll select false. I want this thing to be exactly the same as this text box. So what I could do is I could drag this resizing handle until that guideline appears and drag one of these resizing handles. Okay, very good. So this is the same width as the text box over here. Now I'm going to move this over here because I want the same height. So let me move this right there. Perfect. So that matches with the top of this particular text box. Let me take this guy over here and move it right there. Perfect. So this is now the same height as this text box. I could take this guy and move it into position like this. So let's see if I can get that magenta underline right there. Okay, so that means that this guy is the same width and height as this item over here. Now that's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is to use these tools that are available over here on the top part of where your menu items are. Let me right click over here, and you'll notice that all of these different items appear. I'm going to take off layout. And I'm going to right click on top of this item over here, and now I am going to re-click layout to show you all of these items that appear. Now what will happen is these items are used to align stuff to the left, to the right, top, bottom, resize, or make the same size of, so forth and so on. So I believe, if I recall correctly, it's source destination. So you select your source. I'm going to hold shift. You select your destination. I want my destination to be the same as the source. Notice that all these tools come alive, and as I hover on top of them, I've got all kinds of different items. Make the same width, make the same height, make the same size. That's what I want. So if I click on this guy, notice what happens. This is now the same size as this. These tools can come in really handy. All right, let me unselect, take this guy over here, and now I have to reposition it, so that magenta underline is what I'm looking for. And I want to keep on moving it, right there. Now I see that blue line on the right. The magenta underline extends to the label where it says result. Perfect. Now I want this thing to have a border. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll up over here and go to border style. Now border style, I have several different border styles. I'll just simply select fixed single. And if I unselect it, you'll see the line around here, the border for this particular label. Next, I want to make sure that the text is not there. So it says result. Let me double click, backspace, press enter. And so now that text is gone. Okay, so now what we want to do is to change the size of the form. So I'll select over here and grab this button and resize the form to something like this. If you do not want the minimize and the maximize button with the form selected, as you see over here, the form is selected, I can double click on where it says maximize box, minimize box, and so now no minimize or maximize buttons. Okay, let's go ahead and give names to the various items. Now I'm going to have you name these in accordance with what's called the Hungarian notation. That just simply means that all text boxes have a prefix of txt, all buttons have a prefix of btn, all labels have a prefix of lbl. So I will select this text box, and I'm going to go over here to where it says name. Name is basically an identifier. It's the identifier for this particular text box. So let me double click. It already has an identifier that's called text box 1, but I'm going to rename it to txt, and then I'll say first name. All right, now notice that the first three letters, the Hungarian notation, txt, those are lowercase letters. And then since the person is going to enter their first name over here, I'll put capital F, capital N. This is called the camel notation or camelback notation. The idea is like a camel's back that has a couple of humps. Well, every new word begins with a capital letter. Notice that this is erroneous. You would not want to do this. Capital T, capital X, capital T. It's not that it makes a big deal in terms of programming. It has to do with the convention. If you're going to use Hungarian notation, you must always start off with lowercase letters. Notice also that there are no spaces over here. This is wrong. Right? You can't have spaces in names. So everything must be one word like this. All right? So I just simply press enter, and now this thing has a name, txt first name. Over here, I'm going to select the last name text box, and I'll type in txt last name, enter. For a button, that should be, the Hungarian notation for that is btn, and since this is the submit button, I'll just simply type submit. This is the quit button, so the Hungarian notation is btn. This is the quit button, so I'll type in the word quit. Now, what's a little bit different than the requirements for my lab, which I'll have to update, is I said for you to make this a text box. I'm gonna change my mind and make that a label. So over here, I'll select this, and I'll just simply type in LBL result, like that. Okay, so now that this is a label, you may be asking, well, how come I don't name these other labels? Well, they already have a name, like this is label 1, and this is label 2, and yours may be a little bit different in terms of the label names. It may say label 10, 9, whatever. The reason why I don't name these particular labels is because they don't change programmatically in my program. These labels always stay the same. This will always say first name. This will always say last name. But this label over here, that's going to change. Whatever the person's first and last name is, let's say it's Robert and Solis, this will eventually state, hello, Robert Solis. So since this label changes, then I need to have a special name for that because that's what I will be addressing. So again, if you wanted to create label names for these guys, you could, like if I wanted to change that to LBL first name, I could, but I don't want to waste my time because it's not going to change programmatically. It's going to stay the same. All right? Let me just double check my work. So my eyes are over here while I'm clicking the various items to see if I've named them properly. So txt first name, txt last name, btn submit, btn quit, and LBL result. Perfect. Click this guy over here, which means save all. I would prefer that you not click file and then save as. That's going to get you into big trouble. This is for something else. Just simply click save all to save all of your work. Okay, so we have just completed what's called the graphical user interface, the GUI, G-U-I. Now we're ready for the program side of things. Oh, by the way, I forgot to change that. That's not supposed to say form 1. That's supposed to say enter your name. Okay, so let me select the form. And instead of that text, form 1, that's supposed to say enter your name. Ah, that's better. Okay, again, save my work. I'm ready to create the code side of things. So what I'm going to do is double click on the quit button. So I double click on that. And as you can see, that takes me into the code area. Let me reduce the zoom a little bit. It doesn't have to be so big. Let's go back to, well, maybe 100 is too small. About 150. Yeah, that's pretty good. All right, now if I want to go back to the design tab, I can click on this guy, and here's the design tab. If I click on the code tab, it takes me over here to a particular procedure that begins here and ends here. And notice that my cursor is blinking right here. I'm going to take my properties panel and minimize that. So just click this over here. The cursor is blinking here because this is what you do when you click the quit button. This is where we handle clicking this button. We do this part over here. Let me go back over here to the design tab and double click on submit. Click, click. Now this is where you go when you click this submit button, right? This is what handles the submit click. So as you can see here, things are broken up into what we call procedures. This is the code you run when you click the quit button. This is the code that you run when you click the submit button. Well, let's take care of this guy over here. This is easy. To quit a program, you just simply type in me.cl. I'm not even going to finish typing the entire word close. I just type in CLO, and already Microsoft's IntelliSense, Intelligent Sensing, has asked, or maybe predetermined, if you want to use the word close. And that's in fact what I want to do. It gives me a little tip over here of what I'm about to do. Let me double click on that word close, or I can continue typing it, open and close parentheses, press enter. So if I run the program, which I can do by clicking this start button, what I am now able to do is to quit the program. So when I start the program, it's going to compile this and change this form into a bunch of ones and zeros that basically make a Visual Basic form. Now, you may not have all this extra space. Again, I'm using the Parallels software to simulate running Microsoft Windows on a Macintosh. If you see this extra space, fine. If you don't, that's fine too. Let's see what happens when I click the quit button. So I click this guy over here, and sure enough, it quits the program. Let me run it again. Notice that when the program is running, you see on Visual Studio, this says running. Now, if I quit the program by either clicking this guy or this guy, notice now that this no longer says running. The reason why I state that is a lot of intro students will go over here and they'll say, oh great, my program runs. They'll go over here, they'll try to start typing stuff, and nothing happens. Changes are not allowed while the code is running. So if that's the case, if your code is running, then you're going to come over here and quit your program or close your program so that it is no longer running. Okay? Now this output panel always displays after you finish running a program. Usually what I do is I just simply click on this X right here, and I don't worry about it. Okay, so that's how you quit a program. Now, what do we want to happen when the user clicks the submit button? What we want is to grab the first and last name, we'll put it over here, and we'll attach the word hello. Okay, so let me double click on the submit button. My cursor rather, is blinking right here. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to place something into this label right here. Oh man, what was the name of that label? Well, you don't have to remember the name of the label because you know that all labels begin with an L, E, L. And now you see the beauty of the Hungarian notation. Who cares about what the name of this text box or label or button is? You just simply type the prefix and it's going to give you a listing. Now I only have one item, so that's why it just simply displays the LBL result. So I double click on this guy, dot, TE, I don't even have to type anymore. Text is what I want. Let me just double click this. All right, now this is not the equal symbol. We call this the assignment operator. Everything that's over here on the right-hand side is about to be moved to the left-hand side of the assignment operator, which is into the label. In other words, we are reading this from right to left. For example, if I put the word Robert, okay, now this is not correct code. I'm just doing this to teach you, to give you an introduction to the label. Now, if I run the program, what this is going to do, when I click this button, so let me move this over here so you can see. When I click this button, move the word Robert, which you see enclosed in quotation marks, to the text property of this label. Okay, let's see what happens. So there it is. There's the word Robert. When I clicked this, it moves Robert into the text property of this label. Well, here it is. Okay, let's quit the program. Now, that's not what I want. What I want is to say hello, and then whatever the person's first name and last name is. Okay, so first of all, let me change this to the word hello. All right, now I want to concatenate that, so that's the ampersand operator, with txt. Perfect. It's the person's first name that I want, dot te. I don't even have to finish. Text comes up. Let me just hit tab or double click over here, and that's all I'm going to do right now. Well, our code is not finished, but I want to explain that 50-cent word that I use called concatenation. This ampersand, we call this the concatenation operator. That just simply means take this string and this string of text and connect them together. I call this, whenever you have text enclosed in quotation marks, we call those strings. Whenever you're dealing with text, again, we call those strings. So string is a synonym for the word text. Now what this does is it's going to connect those two. Let's see what happens. I'm in the program, and I'll type in the word Robert here for the first name, hit submit, hello Robert. So it works. It took the word hello and concatenated or put together with whatever is inside of that text box first name, and then it places it into the LBL result.txt. Now, by the way, over here on the right-hand side, you may be seeing all kinds of stuff. Like you may be seeing diagnostic tools or registers or memory. Don't worry about that stuff. Like that's more advanced stuff. We'll talk about that later. In fact, one of the things I like to do is maybe open this up a little bit so I see more of the code while I'm debugging my program. And we'll talk about that word debugging. And now we're just going to introduce some stuff. There should have been a space between there. And let me close the program. You see it's running. Close the program. It's no longer running. What I should have done is I should have put a space right here. Placing a space right there is going to say hello, space, and then Robert. Now I need to concatenate that with my last name. So txt, there it is, the text box last name. That's this guy over here, right? This text box. So txt, you do that again, erase, and then t there. Txt last name, double click, .te, that's what I want, text, double click. So what this line of code says is take this string, concatenate that with this text box, concatenate that with this text box, put everything into this particular label. All right, let's see what happens. I'll click start. So let me type in Robert, Solis, click submit. Hello, Robert Solis. Oh, there's no space there. So what I'm going to do is I'll concatenate a space. So after this, quote, space, quote, and then another concatenation operator. You know, these concatenation operators, they're kind of like magnets that connect these two parts. And this is a magnet that connects these two parts. And then this is another magnet that connects these two parts. Well, I just put a space in between the person's first and last name. So if I run the program, and I'll click over here, type in Robert, tab, Solis, touch submit or tap submit, and hello Robert Solis. Perfect. That's what comes up. Let me click the quit button, and very good. Now we're done with the code. Now I also gave you some additional requirements. If I go back over here, it says make sure that pressing escape on the keyboard is the same thing as clicking the quit button, or pressing enter on the keyboard is the same thing as clicking submit. Well, in order to do that, let's go back over here to the Design tab. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have you select the form. Now, intuitively, you would think, oh, you got to click this button and then change some property, or select this button and then change some property. That's not how it works in Visual Basic. If you want to make it so that pressing enter is the same as clicking this, or pressing escape is the same thing as clicking this, what you do is you select the form first. So I click up here. I'm going to go back to the Properties panel, and I'm going to push the auto hide push pin so that way it stays intact. I don't need this output panel, so let me just close that. Alright, you are looking for two different properties. One is the Accept button property, the other is the Cancel button property. So the Accept button property is that which associates with the Enter key on your keyboard. So which button do I want to be associated with Enter? Obviously BTN Submit. So I select BTN Submit for the Accept button property. Now, for the Cancel button property, if I click this drop down, which one do I want associated with Cancel, which is the Escape key on your keyboard? In fact, it says it down here what it's used for. So let's say that that's going to be BTN Quit. All right, now let me save my work, save all. Let me run the program again, and let's see what happens. Okay, so I'm going to type in Robert over here, tab, Solis. Now, trust me, my hands are not on my trackpad. I'm just going to press enter on the keyboard. Let's see what happens. So enter, and look at what happens. It's as if I clicked this, but as you can see, my cursor was over here. I was nowhere close to here. I just pressed enter, and this appeared. Now let me do that again. My cursor's over here. It's not on top of quit. Let me move it over here. I'm going to press escape on my keyboard, the ESC button on the upper left-hand corner of your keyboard. Let me press that, and notice what happens. It quits the program. It's the same as if I actually clicked the quit program. And that's what this requirement was all about in terms of associating these two buttons with enter and also escape. And that's it. Okay? So this is Professor Robert Solis. This is Professor Robert Solis. I hope this video lesson was helpful. Have a good day. We'll see you next time.